Welcome to another episode of the Victory Podcast, driven by Audi. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by my co-host and former USC quarterback, Cody Kessler. Cody, it is officially game week, which means it's a preview episode for us. We are previewing number 13 LSU taking on the number 23 ranked USC. I'm so excited. The preview and recap episodes are kind of our bread and butter, so I'm glad to get back into it.
Yeah, it feels surreal, too, that it's actually game week.
I know,
and
right?
we're recording this on Friday right now.
Yes.
So this is, as we would call it, the day before the day before.
True.
But we are 2 days away from USC football kicking off in Las Vegas against the LSU Tigers. I'm so excited. This is going to be a great preview episode. It was funny, too, when I was doing my prep the last couple of days. It felt weird. Like, I haven't done it in 8-9 months since the Holiday Bowl in December. So it felt crazy to be doing game prep again. And it's exciting, too, because it's such a big first game. Like, we're going to be the only game on TV on Sunday. The entire country is going to be watching, but that's the type of stage that you want when you come to USC, and it's going to be awesome. It's Big Ten versus SEC. It's kind of everything you want in opening weekend of USC football.
Also, just a PSA, Cody has been so amped for this episode that last night he says he thinks he knows LSU better than USC at this point. You did your research, sir. I'm very proud of you.
Well, it's kind of like that as a quarterback, too. When you're playing, when you're an offensive player or defense, vice versa, you study the opponent. You almost know them better than your own game plan because you have to know what they're doing every single play. You have to know different looks, different schemes, different things they're going to do. And it's especially hard when it's the first game of the year, right? And I talked to Lincoln about this on Trojans Live. I asked him, how difficult is it to prepare for an opponent that you haven't seen on tape yet, right?
Yeah.
And you can watch Blake Baker from Missouri, which I did, or you can watch, the LSU's offense from a year ago, but they have a new quarterback. So it's so difficult in today's era of college football with so many transfer players to really know what the roster is going to look like and know what to expect on the first game. And it's going to be a huge game of halftime or in-game adjustments so that you can know what their game plan is going to be, and then you plan accordingly.
Well, like Cody said, we're recording on a Friday. That is my fault. Apologies for that. I needed to bunker.
Kind of threw you under the bus there.
No, I threw myself under the bus. I had to bunker down and get the Eric Henderson feature piece out.
Which was phenomenal, too, if you haven't watched it.
Thank you. Please watch it, not for my sake, but just because he has an incredible story, and it was just an honor to tell. He's an incredible human being. So please watch it. YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you can find it, please watch it. But we're going to record on Thursday, but then, like I said, I had to hunker down. And so we were recording on a Friday, and hopefully this episode will be out within hours of us recording it on Friday night. So apologies, this won't happen again. It was just a unique, I was drowning in work situation. But
well, I'll say this too, to have your back a little bit. It is week one. I'm the same way now too, that I've signed on for every offensive analyst. I was kind of planning my week. It's Trojans Live, and then especially with the Sunday game, like everything seems crammed.
Just wait till next week.
Yeah, then we play Sunday, and then right after that, we have to do a recap episode
and Trojans
and
Live.
then Trojans Live right after that, and then it's like, okay, Tuesday's a little break, and then
for you,
I get a little break, and then Wednesday it's straight into podcasts, and then here we go. We got a home game with Trojans tailgate show. So I think everyone will understand a little bit that it's week one and kind of throwing everything together. But yeah, hopefully it'll be out by tonight, and then if it's not, then everybody can yell at Keely and blame Keely.
That's fine.
Yeah,
but thank you for your patience regardless. Just a couple of reminders before we jump into it. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you ever want to get your voice heard, you can look out for a tweet or a question box either on Twitter or Instagram. Our socials are VictoryPodUSC. And just a reminder that the LSU-USC game is presented by Invesco QQQ, the official ETF partner of the USC Trojans. Alrighty, Cody, we got to talk about this LSU team. I know you like to start with coaches. Who's their head coach?
Yeah, we're going to start with head coach Brian Kelly, which I'm sure a lot of Trojan fans recognize that name. Kelly was the head coach at Notre Dame from 2010 to 2021. I faced Kelly personally 3 years while I was here at USC. Very good, very respected head coach. He's been at LSU for 2 years now, going into his third season. He's 20-7 as the head coach at LSU, and last year they went 10-3. 2 10-win seasons back-to-back, though, so he has got things turned around there at LSU. And last year he also produced a Heisman-winning quarterback in Jaden Daniels. Now, if you look at the offensive side of the ball, this is where it's one of those co-offensive coordinators again, and they haven't had a first game, so who's going to be exactly calling the plays, I think, is still yet to be seen. But if you listen to their press conferences, it sounds like Joe Sloan is going to be the one calling the plays. He was promoted from quarterback coach last year. He was the offensive coordinator at Louisiana Tech from 2019 to 2021. The other offensive coordinator, or co-OC, is Cortez Hankton. He was promoted from pass game coordinator. He was a wide receiver coach last year. Sloan is the only one of the two with previous offensive coordinator experience. And if you wonder why I'm saying there's two guys that were promoted, that's because their offensive coordinator from last year that led the number one offense in the entire country, Mike Denbrock, is now at Notre Dame. So that's a change to note, but we'll also talk about then Brock a little bit later this season when we play the Fighting Irish. Now, moving over to the defensive side of the ball, their defensive coordinator is Blake Baker. This is his first year at LSU. He has 8 years of defensive coordinator experience, so a very respected DC in the college football world. He was a DC at Louisiana Tech from 2014 to 2018, and then he was at Miami as their defensive coordinator from 2019 to 2020. But most recently, he was at Missouri in the SEC the last 2 years, so familiar with LSU. But last year, Missouri was a team that won 11 games, and they finished in the top 10 in the final AP poll of the season. His defense at Missouri, though, finished in the top 25 in scoring defense, only allowing 20 points per game. But it's a little bit of a homecoming as well for Baker. He's familiar with the LSU program. He was a linebacker coach there in 2021 before he left to go to Missouri.
Now, before we get into the details of LSU's offense, I just want to go over like the main storyline, and we've heard it a lot. We talked about it on Trojans Live, but basically LSU coming into this game is the Bayou USC, if you will. They have a very similar storyline to what USC has this year. They are replacing a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, and they're debuting a new defense with a new defensive coordinator. It's really interesting that, this game was scheduled years and years in advance, and here we are with similar stories.
Yeah, and not even those two. It goes beyond that, right? So you have both coaches going into their third year, right, coming from different programs. Then you have, like you mentioned, 2 quarterbacks leaving. So Caleb Williams won the Heisman in 2022. Last year, Jaden Daniels won the Heisman. Both went 1 and 2 in the draft. Now they both replaced their defensive coordinators, have new top 25 defensive coordinators coming in for the first year. On top of that, you have 2 quarterbacks who aren't transfer quarterbacks who waited their turn.
Yeah, that's a good point.
When 2 transfer quarterbacks came in and took the starting job for them, they had to sit behind. They both go out last year and dominate in the bowl games, win MVPs. And then you're going into this season, both top 25 opponents and first-year starting quarterbacks. So it's crazy. It's almost as if the script writers knew what they were doing when they made this schedule going into this year. But, yeah, it's literally us on paper and 2 defenses that were both in the bottom third of college football from a year ago that have big expectations to make that turnaround this year. So it's a crazy storyline. It's everything you want in the first week of the year, and it's a great matchup, and I can't wait to get into it.
Alrighty, well, let's get into LSU's offense. As you just mentioned, they are replacing Jaden Daniels. How do they do that? What are you expecting for this season?
Yeah, I'm going to start with their stats from 2023. And again, I've talked about number 1 offense in the country, but those things are going to change because not only their offensive coordinator leave, they lost 90% of their production. I'll explain why in a second. And I compared USC from a year ago as well. So number 1 scoring offense in the country, 45 points per game. USC was number 3.
Okay.
Number 3 passing offense in the country. USC was number 5. They were ranked 11th in run offense last year. This is where we can be better. We were 92 in the country. We have to improve. We've talked about before, we've had those 800, 900-yard rushers, but we need to be more balanced on offense this year, and that's going to come up again late, or stay tuned for the keys of the game.
Ooh.
And then they had the number 1 total offense in the country. They averaged 543 yards per game. USC finished 10th in that category. Now, this is, when you have a new defensive coordinator, the best test that you can ask for, right? We want to know a lot about Lynn's defense, so we want to go out there and see what they can do going up against the number 1 offense from a year ago. But there's a caveat with that, and I say that because this offense for LSU is going to look completely different than it did a year ago. LSU loses Jaden Daniels, who was their starting quarterback and Heisman Trophy winner. They lose Malik Neighbors, and they lose Brian Thomas Jr. You may think, okay, that's only 3 guys, can't be that big of a difference. Well, that was their entire offense a year ago. Jaden Daniels had 3,800 passing yards, 40 touchdowns, 135 carries, 1,134 yards on the ground, 10 more touchdowns rushing. But then when you look at Neighbors and Thomas Jr. combined, Neighbors had 1,500 yards and 14 receiving touchdowns, and Thomas Jr. had 1,100 yards and 17 touchdown receptions. So those guys combined, I mean, I know those passes are going to those guys, so you can't really combine them, but that's over 80 touchdowns between Daniels, Neighbors, and Thomas Jr. And then you look at the run game. I mean, obviously, I just said Daniels had 1,100 yards. He was their leading rusher by far.
Wow. Their
next leading rusher was Logan Diggs with 653, and he's now transferred to Ole Miss. So it is a completely revamped offense this year. It's going to be, not only the OC is gone, but there's going to be so many new players, but LSU is like USC, right? It's kind of the next guy waiting in line. Robert Woods leaves, and then you have Marquise Lee coming next. So we'll get into those key players in a second. But yes, it's going to be a new look offense for LSU, but they hired their offensive coordinator within the same system. So it's going to be the same there, and Garrett Nussmeier has showed some promise so far when he's gotten into games. So they're still going to be efficient, just not quite what they were a year ago.
I mean, we have questions about this as well, but my first question is, if you're D'Anton Lynn, how do you even prep for this? Are you just piecing together tape and hoping it is cohesive?
Yeah, I mean, well, the best part for now the defense for LSU is going to be completely different, right? You're going to have a new defense coordinator, that's expected. But when you hire 2 guys with Hankton and Sloan, both of them have been in the system for a couple years now. So they're even though Denbrock's gone, they're going to keep up what they've been doing. They're not going to change their entire offense. It's just going to be a new play caller.
Sure, but personnel.
But then you change personnel. Jaden Daniels is a completely different quarterback than Garrett Nussmeier. Nussmeier's a very good player, and we'll get into that in a second. But then you lose Malik Neighbors, and you also lose Brian Thomas Jr. How do you replace those guys? Well, there's a couple guys that can replace that. So I don't think it's going to be too different. It's going to be similar to last year for us in the bowl game, right? You lose Caleb Williams, who does A, B, and C great, but then you bring in Miller Moss within the same scheme that does X, Y, and Z. So it's going to be similar concepts. It's just going to be a little bit different, like you said, in personnel, but how you attack opposing defense, because you don't have Jaden Daniels and you don't have Caleb Williams, but you have two guys, and they wouldn't be the starting quarterbacks if they didn't fit the scheme that was already in place, right? Or they wouldn't have committed here. And I know Miller got here before Lincoln, but he wouldn't have stayed if he didn't think I could be successful with my play caller. So it's the same at LSU. That's why I think they hired within. Brian Kelly has produced some very good quarterbacks over the years. I think they're going to kind of pick up where they left off. Are they going to be the number one offense from a year ago in the country that we saw in 2023? I don't know yet. Obviously, we're going to learn a lot about that on Sunday. But yeah, it's difficult, and that's why Lincoln kind of answered the question as hard it is for us to prepare for opponents, just as hard for them to know our personnel as well. So it's kind of a chess match, if you will, of an even playing field, but it's still, it's going to be difficult, and Denton Lynn's going to have his hands full come Sunday.
Well, it's also just kind of this new era of college football with the transfer portal. This is kind of going to be week one every year, right? Yeah. I mean, granted, there's different factors about different coordinators changing and whatnot, but it feels like every year we've had this kind of similar storyline of like, what are we actually going to see?
Well, it's funny too, and it kind of reminds me of the NFL because of free agency and how much things change from year to year and how much, how different teams look. But it was always funny when you go into the first game of the year, you're not just watching LSU tape, right? Right now they're breaking down Missouri tape for our offense, watching their defense, right? They're watching Blake Baker at Missouri. They're watching LSU from a year ago, sure, but they're also watching probably other guys. One of their leading receivers just came from Liberty, right? They're watching his tape at Liberty. They're watching different tape of guys that transferred in. Same thing they're doing for us. I guarantee you, Brian Kelly and his offense and Sloan are watching Easton Mascarenas Arnold and Keely Arnold, and then they're watching Kamari Ramsey from UCLA. So it's tough. You're not just watching your opponent's game film like you will week 2, 3, or 4 when you get more into it and you know their personnel. You're watching so many different teams and so many different players trying to scout for week 1. And again, you may go into this game plan or this week with a game plan that's going to have to change in the first 10 plays because they're doing something that you haven't expected. So it's a bit of a guessing match going into this first game, but as tough it is for us, it's just as tough for them. So that kind of evens the playing field out.
So let's get into the key players on LSU's offense. But before we do, I just want to clarify what a red dot guy is. It is a term we use here on the preview shows. But if you're new to the preview show, Cody, let them know what that means. Yeah,
and overall, before I talk about the red dot, that's normally how the preview goes. If you're a first-time listener, we go coaching staff, so you're familiar with where they came from and what kind of their scheme is or what they like to do. Then we go stats from a year ago or current stats and who their leaders are. And then we get into the key players like Keely just mentioned. And we talk probably 5 or 6 key players each time, but there's normally 1 or 2 red dot guys. And what a red dot guy is I hate to say their best player on the field because that's not always the case. I guess it's a player that can disrupt your game plan, right?
Priority.
Yeah, it's someone it's an Aaron Donald type player to where as an offense, I'm going to put a red dot, the laser pointer in film room, knowing this guy can disrupt our entire game plan. It's on the offensive side of the ball, Tyreek Hill. Right, you can shut down their run game. You can shut down Jalen Waddle, but if Tyreek goes for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, which he's done before, it doesn't matter. You have no chance to win that football game. It's a Caleb Williams. It's a Jaden Daniels, if you will, from a year ago. It's a Bear Alexander for us, someone that can disrupt the middle of the field. So those are the red dot guys that if we don't game plan to them accordingly, they can destroy our entire game plan. TJ Watt is another guy that comes to mind. Hey, we can have a great pass game in plan, and we can do a lot of things well, but if he has 4 or 5 sacks off the edge, and now our quarterback's rattled and he can't get in a rhythm, your entire game plan is disrupted, right? So those are the red dot guys. And the first one I have is quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. Again, he's only played in 3 games or a very small sample size to watch him from, and he's got in a couple other games. But I think he is going to be a very effective quarterback this year, not only in the SEC, but in the entire country. Against Wisconsin last year in the bowl game, 31 of 45, 400 yards passing, and 3 touchdowns. Now, when you watch his film, yes, he's different than Jaden Daniels. He's not going to run around. He's not going to rush for 1,100 yards this year, but he can hurt you on the run. He's a lot more mobile, I think, than people have scouted him from before, and he looked good in the Wisconsin game. So my notes were great footwork and pocket presence, which is huge because of how good his offensive line is.
Yes.
He does a great job there. Solid arm strength, looked very comfortable in the pocket, and he has great vision and accuracy. He's not a quarterback that gets off schedule. And what I mean by that is he's going to take a 3-step drop, hitch up, and fire a hole shot on the outside or fire a bender over cover 2. He's going to know where your holes are in the defense, and he's going to be on time consistently. And that's very important because there's a lot of arguments when it comes to quarterbacks is how strong is his arm. It doesn't matter if your timing's on and you can get the ball there when it needs to be and throw it a half second earlier or whatever it may be. And he wasn't afraid to take the deep shot. They had a couple deep throws there. 2 of his 3 touchdowns were great over-the-shoulder passes in the back of the end zone. So he's a very good quarterback. And what we have seen from him, he has played well. And he played against Georgia in 2022, which is the number 1 team in the country, went out and threw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. So someone that we're going to have to game plan for, and he's my first red dot guy. Now, a couple guys to look at as well as wide receiver C.J. Daniels. This was the transfer from Liberty. I just talked about a couple of minutes ago. He had 2,000 receiving yards in his career. He has 21 touchdowns. This is going to be his first year at LSU, but a very experienced veteran on the offensive side of the ball. Now, my second red dot guy is wide receiver Kyron Lacey. He is, in my opinion, when you watch his film, that next LSU receiver, if you will, that, you know, when you have the Odells and the Jarvis Landrys and the Malik Neighbors from a year ago, Brian Thomas Jr., obviously he's got to earn it. I'm not putting him there yet, but in my opinion, I think he's going to be that breakout receiver for him. So he is my second red dot guy, 6'2", 215-pound senior. He has 1,500 yards and 17 touchdowns in his career. In 2023, behind Neighbors and Thomas Jr., was a little bit overshadowed, had 600 yards and 7 touchdowns, but he's an efficient route runner, very good with the ball in his hand, and he's a big player, can make those contested catches, but he's dangerous as well when he gets the ball in his hand. At 6'2" and 215 pounds, you don't expect him to be as shifty and quick as he is, but he's an all-around good receiver. The other guy that's still, I don't know if you have an update on...
I don't, sorry.
Okay, so as of right now, what's coming out from LSU is their next wide receiver, Chris Hilton Jr., again, another guy that can step up into that playmaker role. He's questionable to play on Sunday, is the last I've seen, and I checked this morning. I haven't seen anything saying he's going to play yet, but he is a very talented athlete, probably one of the fastest players in the entire country as well. So he's one of those guys that can take the top off of the defense, whether we're playing man-to-man on the outside or a one-high look. If you're a corner, you've got to give him that cushion and know, hey, I'm going to be physical at the point of attack, but I've got to turn and run. I cannot let him beat me over the top. If he plays, in his career, he has 22 receptions, 415 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Another area where USC struggled from a year ago, covering a tight end, right? I guess the last 2 years, we've struggled at covering those playmaking, pass-catching tight ends. LSU has a better one in the entire country, or one of the best ones in the entire country, in Mason Taylor. 6'5", 255-pound junior, has 74 receptions, 762 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's dealt with a couple injuries over the last year or so. Looked good as a freshman. Last year had an ankle injury that was kind of nagging him for the entire year. But Coach OC Joe Sloan came out and said he's probably the best tight end in the country. Now, obviously, you're going to back your guys, but if he's not far off. He's up there, so he's going to be a great challenge for our safeties and our nickel defenders on Sunday. Running backs, I have an or. I think it's either going to be Josh Williams or Caleb Jackson. I expect Williams to get the start. He's the senior, but sophomore Caleb Jackson looked great in the bowl game. So either one of those guys in there are going to be good. And the reason I say that is because we have a first ever on the Victory podcast in the history. We have a
position group,
entire position group as a red dot player or players, if you will.
Okay, I saw this on your notes, and I thought, I was like, this is the first time we've even mentioned the offensive line,
well, we did Utah. We had a offense and defensive player who was the same player on both sides of the ball. I think it was Viaki was his name. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. But now we have a new first, and that's why I said with either Jackson or Williams in there, I think they're going to be efficient because of our next red dot group is LSU's offensive line. And in my opinion, they are probably the best offensive line, best complete offensive line in college football right now at the moment. This is going to be a great test for our defensive front, especially going into the Big Ten this year, which is a run-heavy conference. We're going to see offensive lines that look similar to this, but you have the best tackle duo in the entire country with Will Campbell and Emory Jones. I think are both going to be first-round picks. Campbell, probably a top 5 pick if he can stay healthy this year.
Wow.
Probably the best tackle in the entire country, maybe best offensive line in the entire country. And then you have 2 guards, Miles Frazier. Now, Frazier was on the injury report, I think, last week.
Okay, so I got an update on, while you were talking, I Googled it. The Thursday update from Brian Kelly is that Frazier is good to go.
Okay, so he's cleared.
Yes, and Chris Hilton is still probable, or questionable, I should say. He's in progression, and we're hopeful that he can be ready to play, but he's making good progress.
Yeah,
that is the quote.
That was the last thing I saw. So that's what I was about to say is Frazier I expect to play, but Hilton Jr. was still questionable as of this morning as well. So we'll see on that. But yeah, Frazier, probably, if it wasn't for Emory Jones and Will Campbell, probably their best offensive lineman. That's how good Frazier is. Probably the best offensive lineman on a lot of teams in the country. But you have two very good tackles, and that's why I say it's an entire group. And then the other guy opposite of him is Garrett Dellinger, who is, again, probably a top 5 guard in the entire country as well. So it is unbelievable just how many dominant players, the experience they have on that offensive line. There's not one weak spot when you look at it from the center out. And again, I think one of the better guard duos in the entire country, and no argument the best tackle duo in the entire country. So this is going to be our biggest challenge. And, how exciting is it that it comes in week 1 for Danton Lynn's front 7?
Yeah, I have so many questions based off of that. Well, first off, we know that the game is won and lost in the trenches. This is the debut for Danton Lynn's defense. How, from your perspective, Cody, are you going to analyze this defense knowing that this offensive line is one of the top in the nation?
Yeah, it's so the biggest thing for me is for Danton Lynn this week is to challenge your defensive line. And what I mean by that is it has to be, hey, we're game planning around you guys. And that's why I call this offensive line a red dot. If we don't stop the run, if we get pushed around up front, if we can't get to the quarterback, LSU was top 5 or top 10 in the country last year in explosive plays. And a big part of that is because of how good their offensive line. If we can't penetrate their offensive line, or if we can't get pressure on Nussmeier, it's going to be a long night, right? So if I'm Danton Lynn, I'm coming out and saying, I'm calling Kobe Pepe, I'm calling Gavin, I'm calling Bear, I'm calling all these guys into my office, and I'm saying, hey, this game is won or lost this week because of you guys up front. Yes, Nate Clifton and some of the guys on the exterior and Anthony Lucas and Jameel Muhammad can help themselves by getting to the quarterback, but the interior of this offensive line, that bully ball, as you like to call it, up front, this is where the game's going to be won, and it's the true definition of, like you said, games are won or lost in the trenches.
Yeah.
This game, this matchup is 100% that, but that's what you want, right? We saw games last year where we got frustrated against Cal because we're just giving up gaping holes on the A gap, B gap, C gap, outside contain, all of it. We're giving up big-time run plays, explosive plays in the run game, giving up 250 or 300 yards in the first half on the ground, giving up huge run plays to Utah that really kind of turned that game around, having mismatch nightmares. Just so many things were going wrong to where if you want to compete at high-level college football against a 13th-ranked opponent that has a phenomenal offensive line and good playmakers behind it, you've got to be able to get those things fixed, and that's why you go out and hire a guy like Danton Lynn. But yeah. I can't wait to see how this front 7 plays, and I can't wait to see or hear about what Lynn says, even post-game after it all, because it's going to go successful. I feel optimistic, but post-game kind of what that message was to his defensive front and how they attack this game plan.
So something we've talked a lot about on this show is how, quote-unquote, funky Lynn's defense is, just meaning pre-snap, post-snap, what you're looking at. Is there a way where if you can't out-muscle their offensive line, you at least confuse them about their responsibilities?
Yeah, and that's where our advantage is going to be. And I hate to say that, though, because I really believe
Not to say that USC can't. I'm just saying, like, is this another ace in your pocket or option?
100%. I mean, I played with, and you're not discrediting anybody, because I've played with a guy named Joe Thomas, who was probably the best left tackle in the history of the NFL, who was each week, even when it was guys like TJ Watt are phenomenal, JJ Watt at the time, these Terrell Suggs when we played Baltimore, it was, all right, Joe's got him. I'm not worried about it. Whoever's on the left side of the field, they've got him. And that's what you have when you have two good tackles.
Yeah.
LSU has that. Now, is that to say I don't have faith in Braylon Shelby and Anthony Lucas and Jameel Muhammad? Absolutely not. But it's going to be a long night for those guys. But you have to make it a long night for those tackles as well, right? You have to go and be a master of your craft this week. Work on 3 or 4 different moves, right? It's not just going to be a bull rush or a swim move every time. Work on a spin move. Work on an inside-out move. So many different things that can confuse him, and then taking it a step further, like you said, identification nightmares, right? That's what Lynn is so good at, and the word funky we've used so many times. Confuse Garrett Nussmeier, right? And it's going to be tough because it's not like he's a true freshman making his first start, right?
Yeah.
He's started a couple games, but he's along the lines of Miller, been in college for a couple years. He understands the backup role. He's been in this offense for a while, so he's not going to be confused by a lot. He did a good job against Wisconsin of pre-snap identification and not really allowing that much pressure. But when you have a smart, physical, dominant offensive line in front of you, it makes it a lot easier.
I'm sure.
How do we gain an advantage? I'm with you on that. I mean, move Nate inside. Bring in 4 DNs at once. Put Anthony Lucas, Braylon Shelby, Nate Clifton, and Jameel Muhammad all in on a 3rd and passing situation. And then also bring Easton Mascarenas-Arnold as well and get some pressure on Nussmeier back there. But it's going to be difficult, and that's why I say we have to be able to stop the run. We can't get moved around. I mean, they're going to have 3-4 yard gains, right? We're going to take that. There's going to be some 10, 15-yard plays. We'll take that, but we have to limit that bully ball to where we're giving up gaping holes in the run game, and we're letting Nussmeier sit back there for 3, 4, 5 seconds because, like I said, he's not going to run like Daniels, but he does a good job of throwing on the run if needed, and if he moves outside the pocket, he can still be comfortable. We just have to collapse that pocket and make it tough on him all night long.
Now, we have questions that are relevant to this section, so I'm just going to bring some up. SoCal Manny said, is it important for our defense to try and stop the run or the pass? How would you game plan for their offense? Which you kind of just got into, but curious your thoughts there, Cody.
Yeah, I'm going to say, both obviously is the easy answer, but if I had to pick one of the two, I'm going to say stop the run because it's tough, and that's, again, kind of looking forward to what we need to do on offense. But it's tough when you don't have a balanced attack, right? When you put all that pressure on Garrett Nussmeier, who, yeah, he's experienced, and he played well in the bowl game, and he played well against Georgia in 2022. This is still, like Miller, his first year as a starting quarterback, right? Now, those other guys are gone. You're not coming in as a backup with, hey, I got to win this game and then the starter's back, or, I got this bowl game and then I get the offseason. This is week one. You've got a 12-week season, including hopefully a SEC or Big Ten championship and then into the playoffs as well. You've got to know, I've got to perform week in and week out. So there's a lot more pressure than just coming in for one game and being the hero.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing for me is if we can stop the run and we can dominate up front with Bear Alexander and Gavin and Kobe Pepe, going to be a big game for Kobe Pepe as well. Guys like that, and we can really just take out the middle of the field for them in the run game. It's going to do a lot to their confidence, right, for LSU, because they came in. If you listen to Will Campbell on his interview lately, and I don't know if you saw it, Bear kind of tweeted back at him. Have you seen that?
It's something about a fist fight, right? Or
he's talking about a fist fight and how physical they are and dominant they're going to be. And Bear quote tweeted it and put kind of like I think the horns emoji or whatever, like the mad emoji. So it's going to be a great matchup. So keep your eyes on that. But if you can come in as a defensive front and really take that confidence away and not allow them to run the football, you start questioning yourself as an offensive line. And that's something you have to be able to do. Offensive linemen love running the football, love that pulling around the corner, power game, kicking out the outside defender, moving up to the second level and pancaking a linebacker. That is where you build confidence up front, especially with the new offensive line. If we can take their will away and not allow them to be efficient in the run game, I think that's going to give us a better advantage for the night.
So Rama wanted to know, how does LSU prepare for USC's defense when they have no film of the current players in this new scheme? Are you just looking at UCLA tape in that sense?
Yeah, 100%. That's what we're doing, watching Baker from Missouri. Yeah. Now they're watching Lynn from UCLA a year ago. But the beauty of it is, and that's what Lincoln said, is as difficult it is for us, and I just kind of alluded that a second ago, it's just as tough for them, right? That's why it's an even playing field, and it makes it to where it's more of a cat and mouse game of, all right, we're going to come out with this game plan, and we're going to kind of test the waters, kind of dip our toes in a little bit, see what they're going to do. Oh, wait, and I always feel like week one of the season you have, especially with a new defensive coordinator and today's era of college football with all these new faces, you have multiple directions you can go with a game plan instead of, hey, it's now week 4 or week 3. We've seen Michigan on tape twice or 3 times. We know what we're going to come in to do. We know what 1 high beaters or 2 high beaters we're going to need to be efficient in this game plan, or where we can take advantage in the run game. When it's the first game of the year, we might have guard tackle pulling. We might have a couple more plays going this way. We might have a power run game, or we might have a man zone scheme up front as well, which you normally don't do for every game. But there's probably going to be a longer, you normally have your first 15, it's probably first 30 this week of plays you want to run through until you figure out what their game plan is. Then you come back on the sideline, and Lincoln Riley's one of the best in the country at halftime adjustments or in-game adjustments. So I feel comfortable there, but now we're going to see what Lincoln do is saying, hey, this is what LSU, their game plan is going to be on offense. This is how they prepared for us. This is how we prepared for them, and now we got to make those in-game adjustments.
And it's going to be fascinating because now they have more tools to do so in helmet communication and tablets on the sideline. So now... Oh,
they got tablets too?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so they've got... Wow. All right, it's NFL now. It's
yeah.
So for those you don't know, I'm assuming it's the same too. And what Keely's talking about is those, you've seen the funny ones where you see Roger slam it or the guy slam it or the guy's watching on the sideline. But those tablets that they use, they're only freeze frame photos. So it's not actually watching film on the sideline. It's, I think, a second before the ball snapped, and then it's 2 seconds into the play. So you get a back view of pre-snap, and then 3 second post-snap, and then you get a side view of pre-snap and then 3 second or 2 or 3 second post-snap as well. So, but that's going to be huge. That's
because how helpful is that for you?
It's unbelievable how helpful that is, because you can see when I was here and our offense coordinator was up in the booth, or if it was Helton or Sark. Sark was on the sideline and called a lot of those plays, but he's coaching an entire game as well. So you'd go talk to your OC, whoever was calling the plays. It was so difficult to, not really because you've game planned throughout the week, but it's so much more difficult to kind of listen to what they're saying and trying to see the vision in your head.
Conceptualize it?
Instead of looking at because you can draw on those things as well. Say, hey, this guy's coming down, this guy's doing this, they're bringing pressure from this side when you see this look. It makes it so much more easier when we got to the NFL to be able to make those in-game adjustments because you have those tablets. So I didn't know that. That's huge. Yeah. And also, that's a great point. The in-helmet communication is going to help when we get up there pre-snap, have a play called, hut, fake a signal or fake a cadence, and then Lincoln can say, hey, this is what they're doing. Miller, let's get to this play. So it's going to be the definition of a chess match. It's going to be an even playing field, and that's what you want in college football.
I'm excited. Okay, any other thoughts about LSU's offense, or are we ready to move to their defense?
No, I need to catch my breath. If you can't tell, I'm excited. Well, it's my bread and butter, I feel like. I love breaking game film down. I love watching players, scouting players, kind of. Yeah. That's what I did for my entire life, playing football.
This is why you're so good at the preview podcast.
But anyways, okay, so yeah, moving on. I'm good.
Alrighty, well, before we get into LSU's defense, just want to give a thanks to Audi. What you expect from an SUV is a range of sizes to fit your lifestyle. Expectations matter, but exceeding them matters more. The Audi family of SUVs, progress you can feel. And also, Trojan fans, celebrate every USC win and enjoy the sweet taste of victory with a free donut at Ralph's the day after the win. Download your digital coupon from the Ralph's app to score your free donut at any Los Angeles area Ralph's store. Sorry, Cody, donuts. You are an OC boy. So
I'm down. I'm further south, so I don't get the free donut. Maybe I'll stick around.
You're coming up on Monday for the pod.
What was it? When is it?
It's the day after the game.
Boom.
There you go.
So this will be the only week I can do it. But,
yes.
Yeah. Anyways, Ralph's Fresh for Everyone Fight On. That's coming up later. That's always my cue for Ralph's. But
so true.
Anyways,
great job.
All right,
Can
I'm
you
cutting
tell
off
we've
your
been doing
ad
this
reads.
podcast for a while now? Cody, I'm prompting you. The LSU defense. What do we expect, or what should we expect?
Again, so I'm going to go over the 2023 stats.
But
new defensive coordinator. But I'm doing it this time because I'm going to compare USC as well, right? We've talked about how evenly matched they are. I have more stats to back that up, right? And it's crazy just when you look at the two teams. I know we got into that, but all right. So in 2023, LSU's defense, number 81 in scoring defense, right? USC was 121, a little bit worse. LSU's passing defense was ranked 118th in the country. We were 103rd. They had the 87th ranked run defense in the country. We were 119, and they were 108 in total defense. They gave up over 400 yards a game, which we did as well, and we were ranked 119th. And then this was a big one for LSU where they really struggled. They were 117 out of 131 schools on third down defense, and USC was 109. So all of that is a recipe for both teams, obviously, to go out and find new defensive coordinators. So LSU fires defensive coordinator Matt House. They go out, get Blake Baker from Missouri. A little bit more of a background about Baker and kind of getting to know who he is. One thing I'll say about him, and it's evident at Missouri, it's evident in what we've seen in camp, listening to Joe Sloan, their offensive coordinator, talk about it. He is going to bring pressure. He will blitz the entire night long. It will come from everywhere, right? He'll bring a safety from this side, a corner from this side, pressures we struggled with a little bit last year.
Okay.
Running backs have to have those antennas up and be ready, but he is going to pressure all night long, and he does a great job of game planning and scheming against you and bringing these pressures and getting home. They did a great job last year at Missouri, finished 11th in the country at sacks under Baker with 39 on the year. They had the number 25 ranked scoring defense, number 34 in total defense, and they played well against LSU. They played well against, I think it was Alabama, had a very good offense last year, and they did a good job of shutting them down or slowing them down.
Okay.
This Missouri team was very good a year ago. Now, when you have a defense that likes to bring a lot of pressure and that likes to blitz, a lot of the times you're susceptible to giving up explosive plays. They did just that. Baker's defense, as good as they were at getting home and being successful on those pressure plays, they were also in the bottom third in the country of giving up plays in over 10 and 20 yards, right? So they struggled. It's kind of that high risk, high reward, or high reward. How do I say that?
I know what you're trying to say.
High risk, high reward.
Yeah,
I guess the right way to say it. Type of defense to where we're going to bring this same pressure. We're going to bring cover zero on third and medium, and it may work this time, but the next time you're going to hit us for a 30-yard gain, right? So it's that kind of hit and miss. But they were so good at doing it a year ago at Missouri, but that was having a full 2 years under their belt of knowing the scheme. So will they be as aggressive this week against USC? I mean, obviously time will tell because there's a lot of new players, new faces, and they're learning each other's scheme. And they also talked about, listening to Baker, I think it was about a week and a half ago at fall camp, saying we're doing a good job of making those big plays, but we're lacking the consistency, right? And we have to be able to understand the scheme and understand communication. I'm sure we're having the same here at USC with Lynn. So again, it's very similar, but a very good defensive coordinator in Blake Baker, and you've got to be ready for pressure all night long.
Interesting. Okay, now, obviously, this is a USC offensive line that is coming together in a new starting five. I thought about it this week, and I don't know why I didn't think about it earlier. It's kind of a disadvantage for Jonah Monheim because he's not starting at center first game in a friendly environment. He's in a neutral site. So the communication between Jonah and Miller is going to have to be on par.
Yeah, and that's my biggest point, I think, or biggest takeaway for our offense this week is we need to be phenomenal exceptional, whatever the biggest word you can use in pre-snap communication, because you have to identify, as funky as we are here at USC with Dan Lynn now, Baker does a great job of doing that, and he'll do it out of a base front. What I mean is when you get in third down, you bring in nickel package, or when we go 3 or 4 wide, you'll bring in those nickel packages and think, okay, where's my antenna? Where's my radar at? Okay, I know they can bring a safety or a strong safety and a Sam linebacker. I know they'll bring a corner cat, pressure sometimes from the left, but he'll do it out of base fronts to where you think, all right, this is an easy base look. We're just running guard, tackle, pull. We're going to keep it simple. They'll bring a free safety from the weak side that you may not have seen all night that you're not ready for. So you have to be ready at all times, over-communicate, right? And this is a great point. The biggest game of the year probably with communication for Miller and Jonah. And, oh, yeah, by the way, it's happening week 1. So
yeah.
And there's going to be
not
other games, obviously. Yeah, and we're on a neutral site in Vegas, and hopefully our Trojan fans travel well and it's not too loud. But yeah, it's going to be crazy. And I get to talk to Coach Luke Eure later tonight for an interview, and I'm going to ask him that same question. How has that progression been between Miller and Jonah? Because it's going to be so important this week with their pre-snap communication. But I got full faith in the guys. It's not, like I said, it's the same as Nussmeier. It's not like Miller is a freshman quarterback making his first start, a younger guy, not used to college football atmosphere. And it's not like Jonah Monheim isn't one of, if not the smartest offensive lineman we have. So
they're both very cerebral.
I have full faith there, but there's going to be some mistakes, and that's okay. And you're going to see some pressures that you didn't game plan for, but that's why you get off to the sideline, you look at the tablet, you understand it, you pick it up, make those in-game adjustments, and you keep rolling. But yeah, that's a great point. This is going to be a huge week for Jonah and Miller.
Alrighty, key players. Who should we look out for on LSU's defense?
Yeah, the first one, and I think their best player on defense, they're my biggest red dot guy, if you will. I have 2 this week for LSU, is linebacker Harold Perkins Jr., right? So he's 6'1", 225-pound junior. If you're a college football fan, I'm sure you've heard the name before. He's been a very good player over the last 2 years. Led the team a year ago with 5.5 sacks, 13 sacks total over his first 2 years, 6 forced fumbles as well in the last 2 years. Now, it's interesting with Perkins, though, because when you watch his game film from last year, he moved positions, right? So he was an edge rusher as a freshman, smaller guy for an edge rusher, but so explosive off the line, so quick. Does a great job of getting those swim moves under those bigger tackles that are a little bit slower off the line. But then going into this last season, they moved him to middle linebacker, right? So he played more on the interior of the defense. Now, they'll move him around still, play him off the edge, but his new home was that interior middle linebacker position. He lost production a little bit, right? And that was a big argument and concern from the LSU fan base was, why are we moving Perkins around, right? So then you go out and hire Blake Baker, right? You're hoping to get Perkins back into that freshman year production level that he was at. Well, Baker comes in and says, hey, I'm going to keep him at middle linebacker still. Now, yes, we will move him around. You'll see him off the edge at times, but he's one of those guys, and I say that because he's one of those guys where you need to know where he's at all times.
A red dot
He's
guy.
number 4, a red dot guy, exactly, if you will. But how they use him is going to be interesting, and this is another personnel question when you have a new defensive coordinator, a player that's as effective, probably one of the better defenders in the SEC, but they haven't played together yet with Baker and Perkins. How's he going to use him on his defense? Now, he did say he will be a middle linebacker because that's where they think he's going to play in the NFL. 6'1", 225 pounds doesn't scream edge rusher in the league, if you will, but I think we're going to see him in the middle of the defense consistently throughout the night, but he's, again, another guy that's going to move around. I think they're going to bring him, they're going to pressure him a lot, especially with how Baker's MO is.
I know this is kind of a moot point because their previous DC is not there anymore, but if he had the production he had his freshman year, what motivates them to move him? Solely that NFL projection?
Yeah, I think that's 100%. And Baker said it, he said it great in his press conference with because they were frustrated. They said, hey, he's at middle linebacker again. What the heck? We brought you here to get Baker back to that same production at edge. Well, Baker said, look, and I got to give Perkins credit as well. He came out in the interview and said, I'm starting to get comfortable in this spot. Last year for me, I wasn't comfortable. Baker's done an amazing job of explaining to me my role as a middle linebacker, right? They lost all 3 linebackers they had from a year ago, or 3 top linebackers. Obviously, Perkins and Penn are still here, but they lost their other linebackers to the NFL draft. So Perkins understood, hey, look, I've got to be that guy now, that leader, that middle linebacker of our defense. I've got to step up and embrace this role. Last year, I was learning it a bit. I wasn't fully confident, kind of like we talked about with Mason Cobb and kind of finding that new role for him in Lynn's defense. It's kind of the same for Perkins, and I expect him to have a ton of production, hopefully not on Sunday, but a ton of production this year. But yeah, he's my first red dot guy, and an athlete. In the game against Wisconsin, he had a rushing touchdown as well. So he came in on offense and had a carry for a rushing touchdown. But
love that.
Yeah, he's the first guy I'm looking at. Now, my second red dot guy is safety Major Burns, and he...
What a name.
Yeah, Major Burns is cool. But Again, Perkins is my first red dot guy when it comes to playmaker ability. Burns may be the most important red dot guy. And what I mean by that is he's listed as a safety. He plays safety, but you're going to see him down playing nickel. Keely Arnold. Think of Keely Arnold a little bit. A very good player to cover out of the backfield, but he led the team in tackles last year, had 93 tackles from that safety position. So they're going to put him in the box slot, but they're also going to allow him to play in the box and then work with your tight end, work with your slot player. He does very good in coverage. Had a pick six last year against Missouri to win the football game to seal the deal. So very good player. You've got to know where he's at all times. He has great instincts when the ball is in the air. And again, like I said, a phenomenal tackler, a tackler of the football. So, yeah, those are my two guys. And a
veteran guy, too, right?
Veteran, yeah. He's a senior, 6'2", 200-pound senior. So those are my two guys. He's one of the only safeties, too, I've seen with – he wears, like, the cowboy collar. Not the big one.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about? The cowboy collar where the old-school linebackers, Well,
you said not the big one, so now
it's just – it's like the donut-type looking one.
Got it, okay.
If you know what cowboy collars are, my old-school football players out there, you know what are you looking it up?
Yes.
You'll know what I'm talking about. It's a black one that is I haven't seen a safety wearing it, is what I'm saying. It's a little throwback.
Yeah. No, I knew what you were saying, but then you said not a big one, so I didn't know if that was like a different version.
That alone, that him wearing that tells me that I'm not surprised he's the leading tackler on that team because he loves to come down and be physical. But so yeah, those are my two red dot guys. Now, other guys to look at, these are playmakers on the defensive side of the ball. And it's not to say that if you're not a red dot guy, these guys can't make big plays in the game or be their defensive MVP or offensive MVP, if you will. These are just the red dot guys are the guys that I know going into a game plan. If I'm coaching, I've got to know where these guys are at all times or they're going to disrupt our game plan. Now, some of the other players that can be impact players for LSU's defense, defensive end Deshaun Womack, 6'5", 260-pound sophomore, 5-star recruit from a year ago. I think he only played 70 or 80 snaps last season, but he showed some promise when he did play. Now they've lost some guys on the outside, so he's going to be a premier pass rusher on that defense. Going to be a big challenge for Elijah Page and Mason Murphy all night long. And then another defensive end they have that's very good is Braden Swinson, 6'4", 250-pound senior. He's a transfer from Oregon. Played a lot of football in his career, played well last year. He's a leader on this defense. So they've got two very good pass rushers, not quite as effective as Burns and Perkins are, but two guys that we have to key on all night. Now, they're probably non-red dot most important player of the night is their defensive tackle, Jacobian Gilroy, right? So he's a 6'3", 320-pound senior. He is extremely important to this defense, and the reason I say that, and Blake Baker, their defensive coordinator, came out and said this as well, and Perkins reiterated it, they are so inexperienced on the interior of their defensive line, right? Outside of Gilroy, they don't have a proven player, not even a playmaker, but a proven rotational player on the interior of their defensive line. Just guys that haven't played a lot of college football, don't have a ton of experience. So Gilroy is going to be so important. And again, 6'2", 320 pounds. He's that Antoine was that Bear Alexander type that he's not going to blow up your stat sheet, but he's going to be so important for stopping the interior of that offensive line. So it's going to be a great challenge for Jonah Monheim. But outside of Gilroy, they are very, I don't want to say weak, but very susceptible to big-time plays on the interior of their defense, right? So I would expect some downhill inside runs maybe to start off this game and take advantage of that. And then two other guys to keep an eye on, linebacker Greg Penn, the third I mentioned a couple minutes ago. He's a senior. He's a leader, 167 tackles over the last 2 years, was a second leading tackler from last year with 89. And then a guy that's a true freshman from last year that is now going into his sophomore season that has stood out in camp. Only 4 games from last year that I think he started 4, played in a couple more. Not a ton of film, but he has been lighting it up in camp when you read about their progression is cornerback Ashton Stamps. I just mentioned he's a sophomore, 6 foot, 190 pounds, having a great camp. And a couple other corners to keep an eye on are P.J. Woodland and junior Jair Brown. Brown is a transfer from Ohio State. And then also Sage Ryan, another guy who's interesting because he played safety last year, has some experience on this team, but now he's made that switch to corner this offseason. And
so a Jalen Smith situation.
Yeah, exactly. It's another
the comparisons.
Another
continue.
comparison, but that's what I think is. And Ryan, before I move on or get too far ahead, is he's a guy that I think could possibly be that starter opposite of Stamps.
Okay,
but we have no idea, right? We saw our depth chart comes out, and the starters are Jalen Smith and Jacoby Covington at corner, and you maybe thought Smith might have been starting at nickel, and then you have Greedy Vance there now, who's a transfer. So it's this. I think it's going to be the same with LSU, and the interesting part about that secondary rotation for them is, okay, we may see who that first group is, but when you get to that second, third drive or nickel or dime packages, how's that rotation going to look? So I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of in-game adjustments. I think that's been the biggest point we've made this episode is got to have those halftime and in-game adjustments. But, yeah, very good LSU defense this year as opposed to last year. I think they're going to be able to take that next step under defensive coordinator Blake Baker.
On the whole, how would you rate the experience that they have? And obviously, they have no experience with this new DC, but younger versus older? What's the mix here?
Yeah, I think they're a lot more experienced with guys that have been there, right? So Perkins is going into his third year, never transferred, right? He's been there consistently. Gilroy's a senior. You got Swenson's a senior. Yeah, he transferred from Oregon, but you've got older guys on this defense. And I think the biggest part for them, and it's like us, right? It's college football. It's a transfer portal. It's a new era. You're going to have guys that come in that are first-year players that have to make an impact.
Yeah.
But it's so important to have those staple guys that have been here. And it's weird to say, like, a guy that comes to mind is Eric Gentry, right? But then you forget he transferred from Arizona State. I guess I'm saying guys that have been here for multiple years. So Perkins is that guy for them. Gilroy, a senior, another guy for them. Greg Penn, third, another senior on this defense. So there are a lot of older guys. Even Ashton Stamps, who's, I think, going to be their better cover corner this year, played as a true freshman, now going into his second year. So that experience is very important, but it's also so difficult because, we've talked about before, you want to build those guys up, or how do you develop players? But in today's era of college football, you have to have transfer guys that continue to compete. You got to be able to answer needs that you have right away instead of waiting for a freshman to get here to hopefully fill that spot.
Yeah.
Now you can go out and get a junior or senior. But I think I still am always going to stick with, to your initial question, I think it's more important to have players that have been here and have that experience that can help out those newcomers, but you've got to have a good core group of guys that have been in the system for a while.
So this is me just being curious. When I look at Lynn's defense, I feel like the advantage is what we talked about. Like, you can't necessarily understand what they're doing pre and post snap. But the way you describe this LSU defense, it seems like they have similar themes to they're going to confuse you a bit, or you're not sure where the blitz is coming from. Does that mean, though, in the inverse, that because this LSU offense has been going against this LSU defense all camp long, that maybe that advantage that I initially was expecting with Lynn is less of an advantage?
Yes and no.
I know it's complicated.
No, it's good, but it's a good question. It's a good point. Yes and no. Yes, because you love, and I love third down practices, right? And even when I was here with Monty Kiffin or different defense, Justin Wilcox, when he was here, you love Clancy Pendergrass was phenomenal at confusing looks. He did such a great job at those different defensive looks and knowing where pressure is going to come from. But you're always going to have that package in your defense, and 90% of the time it's on third down, right? Third and passing situations is when those funky looks come up. But it's tough when you go against Baker, who does it out of a base front, right? And when you watch Lynn's defense from a year ago, yes, they'll show you some different looks, but Baker's MO is, I don't care if it's base, if it's third down, if it's nickel, if it's dime, we are going to blitz, we're going to confuse you, we're going to bring pressure from every which way. You have no idea what's going to happen all night long, and that's going to be our advantage. But when you pick up those defenses or defensive looks, and when you have our defense going against Lynn all the time, or I hate to say the opposite, but it is true, LSU going against Baker all the time, when you pick up those funky looks or those crazy different pressures, that's where you give up those explosive plays. So it's a disadvantage if you don't pick it up or you don't build confidence in camp. But if Miller or Garrett Nussmeier are in camp going, hey, safety's coming, move the line here, hey, remike to 54, bring and you're picking it up and throwing home run shots over that, your confidence is going to be through the roof. If you are going through camp and you're struggling and the defense is winning a lot, then you're going to go into this game like, man, well, we're struggling with our own funky looks. How are we going to handle USC, or how are we going to handle LSU? So it's a great question, and that's the ins and outs of camp that people don't really think about as you prepare of, hey, we're not just going into this game week. I'm taking everything from the last 2.5, 3 weeks of camp, or even last couple months of spring ball, and that's going into my confidence into the season, right? It doesn't just start on Sunday when the first on kickoff, right? It's been the entire offseason prep. That's a great question, and hopefully my answer is it's been a great mix of both, right? Hopefully Miller's been dicing up our defense and picking up the looks, and hopefully they've been having some great plays on them as well, so we're prepared for an LSU opponent.
Well, if it gives USC fans any confidence, when I talked to Miller Moss at Media Day, at Big Ten Media Day, he was talking about how Lynn has made him a better quarterback just because it tests you all the time. And so at least he has experience in that realm. So we'll see how that shows up on Sunday.
Absolutely. And that's why the really good teams in the country, the Michigans, the Alabamas, the Ohio States of the world, are so good because, and we say it's a cliche saying, but iron sharpens iron. When you have a top 5, top 10 defense and a top 5, top 10 offense, you got to think they're going against each other every day in the offseason. Now, when you get in the game weeks, it's obviously scout team and all that, but everything that you prepared for leading up to that game is going against the number 1 defense in the country, the number 5 or 10, whatever it is, throughout the entire offseason, right? Lynn had the number 10 ranked defense last year and the number 2 run defense in the country. We're facing that every day in practice, right? And that's what you want. Missouri, the same thing last year under Baker, had the top 25 defense. LSU is going against that every day in practice, so it gets you ready for the season. That's why you see those teams that have both dominant offense, dominant defense, winning conference championships, and playing in the playoffs year in and year out.
Rama wanted to know, if you were USC's OC, or Lincoln Riley in this case, how would you attack LSU's defense? Would you have a balanced offense, or would you go heavy on the pass?
Yeah, I'm not to jump ahead to our keys of the game, Rama. Great question. We're about to get that in a second, but I think a balanced attack is most important. I really do. We have to be able to, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, because for those of you who don't know, when we do the keys of the game, that gets posted on the USC website, so it might sound a little bit of repetitive, but it's a great question, and I can't help myself, so I've got to talk about it. But when you have a balanced attack, especially with a younger quarterback, I say younger, a first-year starting quarterback, right? Same with Nussmeier, is they played before their experience. But when you have that pressure of going into a first full season as a starter, as QB1, you're not looking over your shoulder anymore or looking ahead of you of someone, waiting in line. It helps so much when you have great players around you, but you have a dominant run game as a quarterback, because when you have a balanced attack, it forces the defense to play to both, right? They can't just sit in coverage the entire night and know, hey, you're going to throw the ball all night. We're going to take away flat curls. We're going to take away the deep shots. We're going to take away the middle of the field. We're just going to sit in coverage and drop 8 all night. Or, hey, we know you're going to throw it all night. We're going to blitz the house and force you to throw a quick game and get the ball out and not get into a rhythm. So when you have a balanced attack and you can run the football, you're going to force them to bring a safety into the box, right? Leave one less player in coverage. You're going to force them to have to play a little bit tighter to the line of scrimmage. The play action is going to bring those linebackers up, make it a little more difficult. So in my opinion, you have to have a balanced attack on offense, but there's also situational football, right? If we hope we don't, knock on wood, go down by 2 scores or 3 scores early on, don't abandon the run, but it's going to have to be more 70-30 pass to run. So situations matter, but overall, I would love to see a balanced attack. Get Woody Marks going. Get Quentin Joyner going. Get Brian Jackson and Amarian Peterson. Let the 4 deep as well get in there, get some different plays, show them different looks, and really build that confidence with our offensive line in the run game.
And you have to think, for Miller, a guy like Woody Marks must be so valuable, especially in a game like this, just because he has so much experience. And if you're having your first start as QB1 and you have a center who's first time at center as well, it must be a comfort blanket to have someone with as many reps as Woody Marks.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, I just flashed back to my sophomore year, right? My first year as a starting quarterback, I was fortunate enough to have a guy named Silas Redd, who was next to me, experienced college football player, transferred from Penn State, a very good running back. But it was just nice to have that veteran presence next to you in the backfield. It kind of made your job a little bit easier, and it took a little bit of that pressure off, knowing that you have an experienced player in there that's going to help you in pass protection, know his blitz pickups, but he's also going to get you some extra yards on the ground and make your life a little bit easier.
Alrighty, well, we're finally going to get to see USC play some football on Sunday, and I'm curious how they can get the job done in Vegas. It's time for the USC Pharmacy Prescription to Win keys to the game. First key, a balanced attack on offense.
Yeah, let's take some of that pressure off of Miller Moss, who's making only his second collegiate start, and let's get Woody Marks going early and often out of the backfield. And look, I'm fine, too, with some quick short passes to Marks or even Zachariah Branch, which are basically extended handoffs, but we must have a balanced attack throughout the night on offense. And finally, a strong run game early on will build some confidence and chemistry with this new look offensive line.
The second key to the game is for the defense: high energy, great effort, and over-communicate.
Yeah, this is the first game ever under new defensive coordinator Danton Lynn, and it's normal that there may be some mental mistakes early on, but we can eliminate some of that by making sure we obnoxiously communicate pre-snap to make sure everyone is on the same page. Look, overall, I just want to see a ton of energy and a ton of effort on defense. If we're going to make some mistakes, just make sure that we're making them 110%. And finally, I've said it before and I'll say it again, tackle, tackle, tackle. Our biggest area of improvement on defense this year is eliminating missed tackles, and that starts on Sunday night.
And the final key to the game, eliminate the explosive plays from LSU's offense by winning at the line of scrimmage.
LSU has one of, if not the best offensive lines in the entire country. Both their tackles, Will Campbell and Emory Jones, will most likely be first-round draft picks, with Campbell potentially being a top 5 pick if he stays healthy. This is a huge matchup for our front seven going up against this LSU offensive line. We have to get pressure on Nussmeier the entire night and not allow him to sit back there and get comfortable going through progression. We also cannot be moved around easily up front and give up explosive plays in the run game. Look, LSU was 5th in the country in explosive plays a year ago, and a big part of that was because of their offensive line. We need to change the narrative Sunday night, and the best way to do that is to be dominant up front on defense.
Alrighty, let's get into some questions. Before we do, just want to give a thanks to Audi. Focus matters. Listen closely. The Audi Q8 e-tron's cabin is serenely quiet, so you can focus on other things, like having tomorrow's technology today. The new fully electric Audi Q8 e-tron, how we get there matters. And at Ralph's, everyone wins when it comes to saving big, because when you order online through the Ralph's app, you get the same great prices, deals, and rewards on pickup or delivery that you do in store. So no matter how you shop, you always save big at Ralph's. Ralph's, fresh for everyone. Cody Kessler.
Fight on.
Boom. That's how you do.
I could see in the mirror. This is behind the scenes. Emily, that was a perfect camera switch right there when I said fight on. Look at that. Emily's back again, our producer.
Producer Emily.
Beautiful
Woo-hoo.
production right there.
Also, shout out to Rich Rodriguez, who helps us behind the scenes.
Yeah, Rich does everything. Yeah. He does. Not for us. I'm saying for USC in general. He does.
USC staple. He's been on the video team since Pete Carroll was here. He did all He did all the cool things, like all the hype videos that got everyone so excited during the Carroll years. So anyway, shouts to Rich.
Yeah.
We have a question from Rigo, who says, Cody, can you talk about what it's like playing in a neutral site and how that potentially affects players? Did you have to prepare any differently? Can I have a little fun fact? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
When USC played in the Cotton Bowl 2 years ago, I thought it was really interesting how Riley made a point to the team during one of the practices. He was like, so many teams who play at this field get caught watching themselves on the giant screen. Okay,
so is that at Cowboy Stadium?
Yes.
The Cotton Bowl?
Yes.
Have you? Okay, I'm going off topic here. I played there before in the NFL when I was in Jacksonville, but I went there the first time for, like, when you get done in college and you kind of have that time between the draft and the end of your college career. They do like these, those TV shows where they have like accuracy challenge and stuff.
Yes.
I did one of those at Cowboy Stadium with that humongous, and they played Madden on the Jumbotron while we were waiting for the production to start. But yeah, it is unbelievable there. But that kind of leads into my answer. A lot of distractions, a lot of outside factors, things that you're not used to seeing in the Coliseum. And yeah, it can be an away game, right, where it's, okay, I know what it's going to be like going to play at LSU or going to play, at Michigan this year. You know what to prepare for. When you're playing at a neutral site, you don't really know what the crowd noise is going to be like because it's, both teams are kind of home and both teams are kind of away, but also the travel involved, and it's different than bowl games, right? So bowl games, you travel, you go like a week before.
It's a long process.
You have time to accommodate. You go to all these dinners and these welcome events.
And you might practice on the field.
And it depends. We practiced at a couple high schools, I think, before too. And then when we went to Notre Dame, we'd practice at a high school.
Okay.
Because we'd go an extra day early. But when you play a neutral site game, the only one I can go back to is the Pac-12 championship I played in my senior year, is you just have to treat it as an away game. And I think that's the best way. You don't want to go in there thinking, all right, we're going to have the advantage. We're the home team. No, even though it's a West Coast, in Vegas, I think LSU is going to travel very well, but you have to go in treating it that there's going to be crowd noise. It's going to be tough. You're not going to be able to hear yourself. If you take that approach, then you won't be surprised by anything. And then if it feels like a home game, great. It's a pleasant surprise. But yeah, I think you have to approach it as an away game, not necessarily as a bowl game, and treat it as if we're going to LSU right now in Death Valley and it's going to be loud and we've got to go silent cadence and all these different communication things.
Yeah.
I think that'll give you the chance for the best outcome.
Bush55 said, Cody, what are the inherent advantages or disadvantages in having a coach call a defense from the field versus in the booth? And if you didn't know, in USC's game notes this week, they announced where the coaches will be during the game. Interestingly, one assistant coach will be in the booth, and that's quarterbacks coach Luke Heward. Everyone else down on the field.
Yeah, first of all, I love that name. You got Push and you got 55, which is...
We've commented on it before.
I feel like we've heard it before,
too. The ultra USC name.
It really is. And Push is talking specifically defense. Obviously, I never played defense, so I'll just kind of talk about an offensive coordinator, position coach on the field or not, and the differences of that. For me, I loved having my coach on the field, right? And for those of you who don't know, in between series, right, if you're on offense, you come off the field, you'll come talk as a unit, first of all, normally, and sometimes you'll go straight to position, but normally you come talk as a unit, right? Everyone kind of sit down, and you see on the sideline on film productions, on games, on the TV copies, they'll talk on the side, and then you split up to your position group, right? O-line will go over here, quarterbacks, everyone kind of has a designated area, and then you'll go talk to your position coach or your offensive coordinator. I've been a part of both, and you see that red phone where you know, the one on the sideline where you kind of talk to your coach up in the booth. I'm a lot more of a fan sitting, because although the tablets are new, but I'm more of a fan sitting down with our coach because we would have a whiteboard and you can kind of talk through that. So when I was here, I had both coach go to a booth and a coach on the sideline. So I don't know the disadvantage and advantages because you can relay messages, right? The coaches are always on the headset, but I hated the phone talk and getting quick points out, and then you hang it up and you're like, oh, shoot, can you call him back? Or, I've got one more question, or before this drive, you don't really get to talk to him besides those quick little phone interactions. So I think having the coach on the sideline is very important. I love that. Now, obviously, Luke Eure is a quarterback coach, so, I would love to have him on the field if I was playing, but you have Lincoln Riley, you have Josh Henson, both your OC and your head coach who calls the plays right there with you. You can talk to at all times. But yeah, I think I don't really know advantage, disadvantage. I think it depends on the player. But for me, I felt like it was more of an advantage to have my position coach or OC right there next to me on the field to talk, in between possessions.
I wonder if this is a sign of how much Lynn trusts his GAs and QCs, because they will be in the booth.
Yeah.
So
your job in the booth is, people don't understand how important that job is,
yeah.
right? Because on field level, it's difficult sometimes to see exactly what all 11 are doing. So if you're on offense, all your offensive coaches are obviously watching your players, but they're more specifically watching defense, right? What coverage were they in? What pressure was that? What look are they getting to on third and medium, on third and long? Your coaches up in the booth, that is their entire job, right? Is to watch their defense, to go through and you chart plays, you go through it, and then in between series, they'll get on the headset, or during series, get on the headset, and whoever's in the booth, if it's a GA, say, hey, Danton, last time on third and fourth, they came out in 11 personnel and ran double crossers, or they came out and, went max protection, play action, so they have those notes for you, and they remember 2 plays ago what they did, and you're reiterating that to your coach on the field. So it's the games within the games, like we talked about before. Like, football's a game, but there's games on third downs, there are games on second and short, first play of the drive. Like, there's so many different games within the actual game that it's a ton of moving parts, and it's, I know there's a lot of other sports that are difficult, but in my opinion, it's one of the most difficult sports, especially the higher up you get, to just stay on the same page all the time and game plan against opponents. But yeah, it's I love that they're all on the field, but yeah, that's going to be a huge job. But you have guys like Taylor Mays, who's, in my opinion, knows one of the best safeties ever play the game, who knows college football very well. Luke Eure for the offense is going to do a great job of being able to dissect the defense and watch them from up there. So yeah, I think it's just kind of works between different coaching staff of figuring out, what you're most comfortable with.
Texas Trojan said, this is a big game for the entire team. However, all eyes will be on the defense. Lincoln Riley and Jen Cohen brought in an all-star coaching staff, but it won't matter if the players don't gel and play with a purpose with each other. Do you agree the defense needs to be violent, he says?
Yeah, I love that last part right there, and I fully agree. We need to be violent. We need to be able to tackle, to wrap up, to not allow LSU to run through arm tackles and be physical, and that starts with the mindset that you have on defense. And we went out and got a championship caliber staff. In my opinion, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I really feel like we have hired a perfect staff on the defensive side of the ball. We've talked about we've got to find the players to fit those roles for Lynn to be successful here at USC, and I feel like we've really done that, right? And I have more and more confidence the more we go from spring ball to fall camp into the season, listening to the players in the interviews, talking about how far ahead they feel they are from, day one of fall camp to now, getting really comfortable and acclimated in Lynn's scheme. Now, yes, there's going to be some mental mistakes, especially in the first game of the year. I don't care if you've been in the system for 10 years or you're a brand new head coach, there's going to be some mental errors, right? Especially when it's the first game, national television, only game on Sunday. But it's the biggest thing for me is how fast can we learn from those mistakes and not make the same ones over and over, right? That's going to be the biggest point of improvement. And I think that's going to allow the team to really gel on the field, right? You can come together in spring and fall camp and game prep week, but the time that you really come together as a team and gel, like they said in the question, are on Saturdays, on Sundays, when all that blood, sweat, and tears in the offseason really pays off and you come together as a team and you make big-time plays and you rally to the football. So I'm excited to watch it. I really am. That's my most exciting thing to watch on Sunday is how this defense plays under Dan Lynn.
Well, it's interesting you asked that because our next question is from Trojan Dad, who said, what are the main things you want to see out of this team in the first game? Fight on, son.
Fight on. That's my dad. Yeah, Trojan Dad. Yes. Fight on. So my first thing, I'll go with defense. I just said there is rallying to the football. Yeah, great. Let's get back to the turnovers. Let's do all these things well. But my biggest thing, I guess, 1A, 1B, and they work together, is stopping the run and tackle, right? I think every USC fan will agree with me that we have to improve from our missed tackles a year ago, and that starts on Sunday. And then the offensive side of the ball, we kind of said in our keys of the game, just a balanced attack, right? Don't put too much pressure on Miller. Don't put too much pressure on this offensive line. Don't put too much pressure on Woody Marks. Let all of them play together, even the other running backs coming in. Now, if we're rolling on offense with Mekhi Lemon and Deuce Robinson and Zachariah Branch, and the list goes on, Jacoby Lane and then, Kyron Hudson, all those guys, sure, I'm fine with a little bit more of a pass-heavy offense, but we can't abandon the run. I want us to be balanced, and I think that's going to be great and build that confidence for the entire offense if we can keep a balanced attack.
Gustavo says, hello, Keely and Cody. Hello, Gustavo.
Hello.
Nice to see you asking questions again. He said, I'm going to be supporting our Trojans in Vegas this weekend, and I had a quick question for Cody. What are some of the things you focus on when watching a game live in the stands compared to watching it at home? Good question.
For me...
You hate watching it from the field.
Yeah, well, I'll say for me...
He complains to me.
Yeah, we do. So after Trojans tailgate show, I'll go watch like the first quarter with you and Emily and some of the other interns, and then I'm like, all right, I'm out. I'm going to the club area. Yeah, but it's just tough to see everything. But for me, I'll say this. Now that I'm done playing, I try to enjoy the game.
Okay.
When I'm watching it live.
Yeah.
Because I know when I go home and study for the podcast or Trojans tailgate show or Trojans live and all that, I'm going to watch film like I'm playing still.
Yeah.
So that's when I get serious and kind of lock in, or I have my wife record every game ever so I can watch all of them or go look at other stuff. But when I watch it live, I try to enjoy it now. It's still tough to do because I'm a diehard Trojan fan through and through. So I get a little frustrated along with the rest of the fans.
Well, the funny
when
thing
things
is,
don't go right, or overexcited when things go well.
You still read everything. You're like open guy, like you're like.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Well, that'll never change. I'll watch football as a former player forever, and a lot of fans watch it as coaches or former high school players, even to where they, I still remember a little bit of what I did. But for me now, I try to enjoy it a little bit more watching, and then when I go into the lab, if you will, and get on my iPad and my film study and all that. That's when I kind of go back into player mode or analyst mode. But yeah, it's tough though. It's tough to do that. I watch a game and sometimes, all right, they're in cover 3. What are they doing here? Okay, because I practice too a little bit for wanting to get in the booth maybe in the future as well. So, but yeah, try to enjoy it on watching it live. Try to do the same, and then when you rewatch it or get it on film or record it at home, then you can get a little bit more analytical.
But what are you focusing on? That's what he wanted to know.
I think it depends. I mean, I when I'm watching offense, I watch the quarterback the whole time. Obviously I'll see what they're doing defensively, and then my eyes go to the quarterback. And then when I'm watching our defense, I still watch the opposing quarterback because that's just what I played, so it's natural. But yeah, I try to watch everything, but my focal point is more so on whatever quarterback's on the field and how they're going through reads and their pocket awareness and all that.
That makes sense. Fighting on MC said, which fans fill up Allegiant Stadium?
I mean, I'd love to say USC, but from what I've heard,
sounds like LSU
sounds like LSU has bought a lot of tickets. So. And they're going to be traveling pretty heavy. So I hope we do the same. Obviously it's closer to California than it is Louisiana, but who knows? I mean, I'm excited either way.
Yeah.
Either way, it's not going to be, like I said, treated as an away game, but it won't be an actual full away game. So we have that advantage, but I'm hoping we see more Cardinal and Gold than we do see purple and yellow.
We can report back on Monday. We'll keep you posted.
Yeah, you'll be there.
Okay, we got a couple questions about this topic. Joe and Warren wanted to know, what are your thoughts, opinions on the week-to-week captains, good/bad, culture change, ? Warren said, what's the deal with weekly captains for each game? Now, I tweeted this during Lincoln's presser, and within like 5 minutes, so many people on the internet were like, oh, I hate this. Oh my gosh, which is what the internet does. I know, but I wasn't expecting that much of a reaction.
Yeah, I'm torn with this because I've been a part of both. And what I mean by that is I've been on teams to where you have, I guess not both in the sense of week-to-week captains, but I've been on a team where you have your core 4 captains, I guess, if you will, maybe 5, and then you have voted on captains each week, which is normally
interesting.
Which normally was like a scout team captain, which was cool for some of the scout players who are so important. So
yeah.
I think when I was here with Sark, we did that to where it was like, okay, these are the 4 captains or 5 captains, and then each week a scout team player got to go out for the coin toss as well as a scout captain, or a special teams player who's normally not a captain. I don't know. I mean, I'm not too opinionative on it. I don't know if it's going to be a bad thing. I think it gives guys an opportunity to kind of work towards that captain role still, or prove their leadership to the team throughout the entire year, and not just because it is a big thing, right? Some guys don't care about it. Some guys are like, whatever, I'm going to, I'll be fine either way. But some guys do take pride in that. I want to be a captain of this team. I want my peers to see me as such, or my coaches to see me as such. And now you have weekly opportunities to do that. I think that's going to put a little bit more motivation into this team of proving week in and week out that I can be a captain and I want to earn that role, or how many times can I earn that captain role throughout the year? And maybe some guys that they want to step up or take more of a leadership role, it doesn't kind of, discredit them or disprove them from, earning that still throughout the entire year.
Honestly, I think that this is really interesting in the context of everything we've heard since the Holiday Bowl. Because the Holiday Bowl is when we first heard the players who were playing in this game wanted to be here and really cared.
Yeah.
That's like the sentiment that came out of the game. And then we hear from in spring and in fall camp, there were these extra efforts to, have team chemistry, to know different players on and off the field. They talked about how, they'd have a DB with an offensive lineman like hanging out. Like there was definitely a concerted effort, it sounds like, this season to improve team chemistry and really make sure that these guys are bonded, so when adversity hits, that they will be able to respond to it in a proper way, or however Riley wants them to. And so I think this is interesting because clearly this is something that I believe it's Riley's call. He was like, I made this call because apparently this is what they did for the Holiday Bowl, which makes sense because their captains were different, like the personnel was different.
Yeah, true.
But I just think it's interesting looking from our perspective into this team and this team culture of something apparently needed to be changed culture-wise.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, thinking Riley thinks it's going to be the right decision for this team, I'm sure the players feel the same way. And I think I understand, I guess, the confusion from the fans because this is not a common thing to see. Normally, you have your core captains, but I will say, and kind of going back to what I just said, is it was a battle each week for who was going to win that honorary captain role, right? And I really remember guys on scout team taking that extra step or working a little bit harder because they wanted to be the ones walking out in the field with the captains, even though they may not play because they were scout team players or they were special team players that played a couple plays, a game. But you felt that extra sense of urgency to say, hey, I'm going to work a little bit harder this week because I want to be a captain. I want to show my team that I deserve to be out there in the coin toss and walking out and leading this team. So I love it. I think it's going to be a great thing. We'll see. I guess time will tell with how it works. I'm sure there's going to be some reoccurring captains week in and week out, or did he say if it's going to change, or
it's game to game?
So I mean, but can you get it multiple times? I guess is my question.
I think so. Yeah.
So I would assume there's going to be some reoccurring captains, but
it'll settle in at a certain part of the season.
I mean, maybe and it stays consistent, but I like it. I think it's cool. I think it motivates guys even more to go being a leader on this football team throughout the year.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty, final question of the day comes from Trojan Mom. She says, "You played in a neutral site game in the Vegas Bowl. Are there any comparisons to what Miller Moss might feel?"
Yeah, I wouldn't say you can really compare the two just because the bowl game that we played in was similar to the Holiday Bowl last year, right? I had 9 wins, so it wasn't terrible, but the season came up a little bit short of expectations. That was a year, too, when it was multiple head coaches, kind of that crazy year of the Ed Ogeron run, all of that. But it was just, when you play in a bowl game, you want to be able to win that game to build some confidence going into the offseason, but this is completely different, right? And the only comparison, I guess, is playing in Vegas, and it's also a neutral site. But this is the first game of the year, right? This is going to set the tempo for the entire season. So you have to go out there, locked in. You've got 11 more games after this, hopefully more if you go to a conference championship and then ultimately to the playoffs. But overall, you've got to treat this game as, hey, it's the first one of the year. We've got a lot more. Focus on this. Don't look ahead to the Big Ten. Don't look ahead to next week. Coming back home in the Coliseum, lock in on this game and go out there and be dominant. And hopefully the Trojans come away with a victory.
Alrighty, I said that was our final question. And truth be told, that was not.
Oh.
But.
Oh, yeah. Where are our Instagram questions, Keely?
Okay,
You want to tell everybody who wrote questions, took the time out of their day to write questions on Instagram for the Victory Pod, since I'm not allowed to do them anymore because we have too many. Go ahead. I'll let you take it away. Where are the Instagram questions?
Well, I didn't realize that they go away within 24 hours. And when we pushed the pod, I didn't screenshot them. So I apologize to everyone who had Instagram questions. Cody already roasted me enough.
If I'm just saying right now, if I was doing the Instagram questions, everyone, this would not happen. So, I apologize that my co-host over here, who has no responsibilities throughout the entire week, all she has to worry about is Instagram questions.
Yeah,
could not find out how to retrieve them.
True.
They did disappear though.
He checked. He tried.
I looked at you. Well, I would have screenshotted them right when they came in because, I'm a great question answer, I guess. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyways, I'm just messing around. For those of you who don't know our humor, I'm giving Keely a hard time. She has a ton of other things she does, but I got fired from doing Cody's 2-minute, 4-minute, 6-minute, 8-minute drill.
You did, yes.
Because the episodes were going too long.
Way too long.
And then this is karma because now you lost the Instagram questions.
Not. Okay, anyway.
We do have score predictions, though.
We do, and I totally forgot about it. But.
Oh, here we go.
Am I supposed to go first?
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, this is the last thing we'll do. God. We do score predictions for every game, right? And then whoever's the closest, home and away, or the difference of the two, whoever's the closest wins each week. Keely is 2-0 over the last 2 years.
What?
My complaint, because I'm too competitive and I don't want her to win again, is she would always make me go first on the predictions, and then you would be somewhat similar to mine.
Just because
it was like
you
played it like a guessing game. Like, what's the show? The Price is Right. I would be like, hey, 800, and you'd be like 801. Dang it. And then you would win.
And you should have said 801.
I know, I should have. Okay, I will say though, she has gotten 2.
Each year I've gotten
whether
an exact
you're
score.
going off on mine or just completely random. got exact
It's
game
the
score.
vibes. I
One
just
game
sense
each year.
it.
Okay.
That's
All
what
right. So
happens.
am I going first again?
No, because you complain so much.
Good. That's
So
okay.
when
Complaining worked. So complain, people. It works. All right. You go first.
This popped into my head when we were doing Keys to the Game. I'm going to go 23-21 USC.
Okay. Cool. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a shootout. It could be a low scoring game.
I don't think it will be. In my mind, once that happened, I was like, I think it's going to be higher, but I feel like I need to honor my gut feel, so that's what I'm doing.
It could be, though, like we mentioned, both new look offenses, new look I mean, it's your score guess is as good as mine. I'm going a little bit higher than that. I'm going 38-31 USC, and we pull off the victory. I love that we both agree that USC is winning, though. So we'll take that. I guess the Vegas odds and all that don't agree with us, but hey, here at the Victory Pod, we're always fighting on.
I don't know. I have a good feeling. I know I sound crazy because my friends have told me that, but I have a good feeling. And if I had gone after you, you would have inspired me to say 42-38. So
yeah, no, if I would have went 30, yeah, you would. Is that what you would have went with? The same one. See, and then I would have been. It would have been like 43.
Here's the thing.
To 36.
That doesn't change the probability of it happening.
Yeah, but the thing is we go different. So if they, well, I guess they'd have to score less than, huh?
Yeah,
just pick the right answer. Basically, is what I'm saying. Just pick the right score.
I picked 2, so I'm better.
All right, I know you guys are probably tired of us ranting about that now, so we're done. We're gonna keep a tally though. If you guys want to guess your score predictions too, when we post the episode, we have people predict at the bottom before the game, so that's cool as well. And we can keep your tally, or you can keep your tally from home. But with that being said, everything. My outro's up. Everything.
Yes.
Everything's done. It is USC.
And my computer just died.
Football game week, 2 days away. Hopefully this episode gets out tonight. If
I'm excited.
Not, we
it's
have,
one day
and I love that we're gonna be the only game on TV. The entire country is gonna be watching everything you want when you come here to USC. I'm just excited. I know our guys are gonna be ready. Lincoln Riley's gonna have this team ready to go. Denton Lynn's gonna have this defense flying around. I'm excited. We're gonna be calling the Trojan Tailgate Show pregame as well. So make sure you tune in and watch that or listen, however you get that. Other than that, I'm done. USC football's back, baby. Fight on. Love you guys. I'm excited for a great year.
Honestly, I'm so excited for some football. I feel like we've talked so much this offseason, and rightfully so, but it gets to a point where it's like, I need to see something.
Well, you do so much with prep and talking about it. You forget, I forgot this. I'm like, oh yeah, I get to sit down and actually watch the game this week. I get to watch football. I know we're going to be working, but still, or you will. I'll be driving home from ESPN LA. But other than that, it's and I won't be watching my car. Don't worry. But we get to actually watch football now, and it's
I know
you build up the entire offseason, whether you're a player, or a fan. It's just it's the best time of the year.
I know.
Now it's fall and everything's happening. It's awesome. So yeah, I'm done. I've already said it. Fight on. Hopefully we talk to you guys on Monday, or we're gonna do the recap episode as well. And we're talking about a Trojan victory.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for our preview episode of USC versus LSU. We'll be back, like Cody said, with a recap episode, so stay tuned for that. That's going to wrap it up. That's Cody. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time.